For the first 30 seconds, imagine a single day when fear reached a perfect balance, when Derry's silence grew heavier than screams, when memory failed at the exact moment courage was needed, and when Pennywise came closer than ever to ending the cycle forever. Because in this story you will discover how a town was pushed to the brink without realizing it, how hope nearly collapsed under its own weight, how a single fracture in belief almost tipped reality itself into darkness, and why the most terrifying victory is the one that almost happens, leaving scars that never truly fade. This story begins on a morning that felt ordinary in every dangerous way, with the sky hanging low and colorless over Derry, with routines continuing as if routine itself were armored, because Pennywise thrives when nothing looks wrong, when fear simmers quietly beneath politeness, and on this day the balance was perfect, the town already softened by decades of neglect, denial, and unspoken dread, creating an atmosphere where terror did not need to announce itself loudly, only to breathe. Pennywise did not rise from the sewers with spectacle, because spectacle wastes energy, and instead the influence spread subtly, tightening like a net around small moments missed. Phone calls, locked doors, left unopened glances that lingered too long on empty streets. And this quiet orchestration revealed the true intelligence of the entity, because winning was never about killing quickly, but about aligning fear, memory, and timing into a single irreversible collapse. What made this day different from every cycle before, it was not a new form or a more violent approach, but precision, because Pennywise understood that the town had grown tired, that the echoes of past horrors had faded into disbelief, that adults dismissed warnings as imagination and children learned early that fear should be swallowed, and in that exhaustion Pennywise sensed opportunity, the rare moment when resistance weakens not from terror, but from apathy. As the hours passed, Derry felt strangely hollow, as if the town itself were holding its breath. Because Pennywise was not feeding yet, not directly choosing instead to starve the town of certainty, allowing unease to build without release, turning every unanswered question into a seed of panic, and every seed into nourishment waiting to be harvested later. Beneath the streets beyond human senses, Pennywise adjusted its approach, weaving fragments of memory and suggestion into the town's collective mind, encouraging forgetfulness, distorting time, blurring faces, and dulling instincts, because the greatest threat to Pennywise was never bravery but remembrance. And on this day, remembrance began to fail in subtle, devastating ways. The true horror of the day Pennywise almost won lies in how close the world came to silence. Not the silence of death, but the silence of acceptance, because fear reached a level where it no longer screamed for help but curled inward, convincing people that nothing could change, that danger was inevitable, and that resistance was childish. And this psychological shift marked the moment when Pennywise's victory became possible. At the center of this near collapse was belief itself, fragile and easily fractured, because Pennywise does not destroy bodies first, but trust in memory, trust in others, trust in the idea that the past matters. And as belief eroded across Derry, the town slipped toward a state where Pennywise no longer needed to hide, because fear had already rewritten reality to accommodate it. What makes this story so disturbing is how invisible the threat became, because no alarms sounded, no grand confrontation erupted, and instead Pennywise nearly won through absence, through people choosing not to act, through doors not opened and questions not asked, revealing that the most effective horror does not force obedience, but invites surrender. As night approached, the atmosphere thickened, and the town's remaining defenses weakened further, because night amplifies doubt, stretches shadows, and turns imagination into evidence, and Pennywise used this transition expertly, allowing fear to peak just below awareness, where it could paralyze without provoking resistance, turning Derry into a place where everyone felt watched, yet no one could explain why. Deep below, Pennywise prepared for the final phase, not a massacre but a convergence, a moment when fear, memory loss, and isolation would align perfectly, allowing the entity to anchor itself permanently, severing the cycle of retreat and return, and transforming Derry into a stable feeding ground where hope would never fully recover. The terrifying truth is that this plan nearly succeeded, because the conditions were ideal, the town compliant, the past buried, and the future uncertain, and Pennywise's patience, sharpened over centuries, finally met a world distracted enough to ignore the signs, proving that ancient evil does not require chaos when neglect will suffice. What stopped the victory was not strength, not weapons, and not certainty, but fracture, a single imperfection in the design, because fear, when pushed too far, can sometimes loop back on itself, creating moments of clarity born from desperation. And in that narrow window, belief resurfaced just long enough to disrupt the alignment. This disruption did not defeat Pennywise, because defeat implies loss, and Pennywise lost nothing that day, but it prevented permanence, forcing a retreat that felt less like failure and more like postponement, as if the entity simply stepped back, recalculated, and allowed time to reset the board, confident that another opportunity would come. The aftermath of the near victory was subtle and haunting, because nothing visibly changed, yet everything felt wrong. Memories slipped away more easily, unease lingered longer, and the town carried a new weight, the weight of having stood at the edge without realizing it, a collective near miss that left invisible scars etched into the fabric of daily life. This is why the day Pennywise almost won is more terrifying than any outright massacre, because it reveals how close the world can come to surrender without ever noticing, how evil can advance quietly, efficiently, and patiently, and how survival can depend not on power but on fragile, fleeting moments of awareness. In the end, Pennywise did not vanish in anger, but in satisfaction, because the lesson of that day was not that it could be beaten, but that it could wait. And that knowledge is the most unsettling victory of all, the certainty that fear remains planted, dormant but alive, ready for the next moment of weakness. If this story unsettled you, chilled you, or made you rethink what true horror really looks like, make sure to subscribe for more terrifying deep dives into the darkest stories ever told. Leave a comment sharing what part of this near victory disturbed you the most, and share this video with anyone who believes evil always announces itself loudly, because sometimes the scariest day is the one where almost nothing happened at all.